Just a little while ago, Russia crossed a casualty line of 200,000 dead, according to the Ukrainian MOD at least. Now obviously there is a great deal of benefit to overstating the Russian casualties, and I do not blame the Ukrainians for doing it, but we do need a more accurate figure, one that is representative of the actual amount. Let's drill into things a little more. The most direct information we have received from the Russian side has been that of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the bald head of Wagner PMC. In a recent interview he claimed that at the beginning of the battle for Bakhmut, the Wagner group had 35,000 troops and that shortly after that, he managed to recruit 50,000 prisoners, giving them a total of 85,000. Prigozhin claimed that during the 8 months of continuous fighting, 10,000 prisoners and 10,000 full-time professional Wagner fighters were killed in action. This immediately raised questions as he implied that professionals were killed more easily than untrained prisoners who were used in pretty much frontal assaults without any support. Based on this, the professionals had a 30% and prisoners a 20% death rate. Mill blogger and former Russian soldier Igor Gherkin pointed out that only half of the prisoners reportedly received pardons, which means Wagner lost 25,000 prisoners. He went further and speculated that other losses are 50% higher, meaning that Wagner lost 15,000 full-time professional fighters. The total number of killed in action, therefore, is estimated to be around 40,000 troops. But this is only killed. Many soldiers get wounded. Prigozhin claimed they had as many wounded as killed. Given the poor treatment we have experienced and spoken about previously, a 1-to-1 dead-to-wounded ratio is to be expected. Russian soldiers with only the lightest wounds make it out alive. There simply isn't the care or support you would expect for a major conventional army. If you are unsure, please watch our video on the spate of suicides recently experienced by Russian soldiers. All in all, that means Wagner has incurred roughly 80,000 casualties during the Battle of Bakhmut. A substantial number, especially when you remember that this is one section of the front, one part of the Russian force, one period. This excludes the losses incurred during the Ukrainian counteroffensive, the action at Volodar, etc., etc. The most telling external work done on the Russian casualty numbers has to come from CIT, or the Conflict Intelligence Team. This is an OSINT group created by and staffed by Russians. Now before you jump up and say, how can they be taken seriously, this group had to flee Russia for Georgia and was charged in absentia to creating and distributing fake news under Russians' fake news laws. These laws have been one of the many undemocratic policies and laws established by Putin to control the population. They believe that Russian losses are closer to 270,000. CIT sifted through media reports like the BBC's own analysis of Russian obituaries and concluded that Russian families since February 2022 have buried as many as 33,000 soldiers. Next, CIT estimated the number of Russian troops who are missing in action by applying the MIR ratio that the Russian 1st Tank Army reported in documents the Ukrainians captured last spring. After 3 months of hard fighting around Kiev, the 1st Tank Army registered 61 dead and 44 missing. The same ratio, if it applies to the entire Russian war effort, points to tens of thousands of MIAs, most which, according to CIT, can be assumed dead. In all, CIT assumes as many as 65,000 Russians have died in Ukraine. Historically, modern armies suffer 3 or 4 wounded in action for every 1 soldier who's killed in action. Thus CIT's 270,000 overall figure for combined wounded and dead. Put another way, the entire army that marched in Ukraine has become a casualty. Statistically speaking, I have 2 major problems with some of the assumptions made by CIT, the most glaring being Wagner. Of the roughly 25,000 prisoners who are assumed to have died, how many have had obituaries written for them? How many have even been recovered? I can assure you that the ratio of dead to missing is almost parallel if not worse for Wagner. Then of course there's the simple question of transparency. If the Russian MOD doesn't feel the need to be transparent about war dead and wounded, why on earth would a private company like Wagner feel the need to do so? That leads into the second issue that runs intrinsically through every Russian army. How much caring goes on for wounded Russian soldiers, and how many are simply left in place to die slow and horrible deaths? CIT has used a 3 or 4 to 1, wounded to dead ratio. When it comes to this Russian army, I am inclined to side with Prigozhin. Unless you have a small wound, you are dying. So, a 1-to-1 ratio is closer to truth. What that means is that if you take the combined dead attributed by CIT, 65,000, then add in the 65,000 wounded, you are closer to 130,000 total wounded and dead. Is this the correct figure? Honestly, no. I think that is because CIT's method of accumulating the dead fails to incorporate the recently disclosed Wagner figures, and as mentioned, I doubt these would have made it into ordinary forms of media for scrutiny. So that raises the amount, as far as I am concerned, to roughly 100,000 dead and a total of 200,000 dead or wounded. This doesn't sound like a lot. But just for comparison's sake, the Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium, home of the Texas Longhorns in the U.S., has a capacity of 100,119 people. Now imagine you filled that stadium up and then slowly executed everyone in center field. That should give you an idea of the number of dead. This figure of 200K happens to dovetail rather neatly with what the United States government is estimating the Russian casualties to be. I would never assume the US to bandy about pie-in-the-sky figures. They have thousands of analysts pouring of data just like this in places like Langley and the Pentagon. Knowing the strength of Russia would be a primary task for them to understand and agree upon, especially if there is a chance that they could find each at war. For all the polarizing political shenanigans affecting the US, never doubt the ability of their intelligence services. In terms of Ukrainian casualties, I wouldn't normally cover it. But I am going to offer this comment. I think they have had similar casualties of roughly 200K. However, due to a clear and obvious desire to help their men, a short line to medical care and the impact of Western medical support and technological advances, the casualty-to-death ratio is closer to 7-to-1. Which would mean that the Ukrainian death rate is closer to 30,000, having potentially suffered more wounded. Now this is clearly a significant number, but is it unexpected given the nature of this war, which has seen massive amounts of artillery and armor being used? This would also explain the need for Ukraine's increased manpower, taking their standing army from roughly 250 to 750,000 incredibly quickly. The heroes of Ukraine have sacrificed a lot to stop the assault by Russia, and it won't be in vain, but sadly it also isn't over and there's more pain to come. Well, that's my opinion at least. What's yours? Drop a line and comment. I would love to hear from you.